Let me introduce some very basic things about Docker. I'll talk about images versus containers, mounting file systems, and mapping ports. Docker image. This is a list of all the images that I have on my computer. Images are like little packaged ecosystems for Linux programs. I have a few images for few different versions of images for Federated Wiki, a Neo4j image, and a couple of things from Rancher. We're going to be interested primarily in this Alpine image for the sake of this presentation. And while we're here, let's also get a list of all the containers that I have on my system. The command of interest is the docker container ls-all -all. The rest of this is hackery I'm doing to get a narrower display when I have the font zoomed in as I do. Here's what that looks like without my hackery. It's a little harder to read, so a little extra hackery to choose a narrower collection of things there. But let's have a look at inside a container. So the structure of this command is docker run. That's going to create a new container from the Alpine image using the shell command. And the -it tells Docker to let me have an interactive relationship with that shell command. The T stands for TTY. If you know what a TTY is, that's handy. If you don't know what it is, it's fine that you don't. So here I am inside the Docker, inside the container. You can see that my user ID in the container is root. My current directory is here. It's the very root directory. This is what the environment variables look like when I'm in here. And if I type the cd command with no arguments, I end up in my home directory. We can find out that the home is /root, and you can see that also matches the environment variable. So it's behaving like a Linux box. And if I look at the list of directories in the root folder, sure enough, a file system that resembles a Linux file system. So let's get out of the container, and just for fun, let you see who I am outside of the container. That's my user ID. Instead of showing you all the environment variables, I have about 40 of them, so it's definitely a different environment outside the container. So hopefully that makes clear there's a little ecosystem in there. Let's do, next thing is to talk about mounting file systems. In this case, I'm going to give another command, which let's call, I'm going to have a local shared folder in the current directory. So $pwd expands to the current directory I'm in. In fact, actually, let's come back here. Let me show you that. Echo pwd. That's the name of our current directory. I will mount a shared folder from the host computer, my laptop, and inside the container that's going to show up at the root folder named Magic Gateway. So now I'm inside the container. Here's the list of files, and sure enough, you can see there's a Magic Gateway. There's nothing in the Magic Gateway, but let's create a little greeting. Double check that it exists there. Maybe notable that inside the container, that greeting file looks like it's owned by root. And then we'll get out of the container and have a look at what's on the file system here. So look at that. I have a shared folder on the outside. Recall that it was Magic Gateway on the inside. And if I scroll back up in my, here's where those names came from. There's shared folder on the outside and Magic Gateway on the inside. Left is the outside, right is the inside. And if I have a look at the greeting, from outside of the container, I can see the file that was created on the inside of the container. So that is what makes this volume mounting trick interesting, is the ability to be able to share files between the host computer and what's happening inside of the container. So I get a little portal between the host and the little protected ecosystem inside the container. That can be handy for saving files that you want to be able to find again in the future. Last thing I want to talk about is mapping ports. So here I'm running a command. It's got a pretty similar structure. IT again is for an interactive session, and I'm going to run the shell command. Well, I guess I'll make this. That's the IT. Here's the shell command. What's new is this port mapping trick. I'm going to take port 2020 on the outside of my computer and map it to port 80 inside the container. So now I'm inside of an Alpine container. I'm going to, well, let's do this. APK Netcat is a handy little utility for debugging network things. And it's another one of these things that's handy because it's very small and quick to install. And I can, let's get another window open. So the top half here, I'm inside the container. I've just installed Netcat. The bottom half is back on my laptop. And up in the top half, I'm going to have Netcat listen on port 20, or no, excuse me, inside the container, I'm going to listen on port 80. And then outside the container, I will try a curl command. So -I is going to ask for just the headers at the URL I'm putting in here. Let's make that look more like a URL just for. So curl pretends to be a web browser, or maybe another way to put it is that it is a web browser, but works from a command line. So it's not a visual web browser. But it's going to issue a command just like a web browser would to my local computer on port 2020. And what we can see is that inside the container, I've gotten the request from curl. So it's asking for the head at root, and it's saying, hey, the host I tried to contact is named localhost at 2020. It's telling me who it is. I'm a curl agent, and I'll take back anything you give me. So what I'm going to do is reply, and I'll just reply with garbage. And sure enough, curl says, hey, that was a weird reply from the server. And that was the end of my netcat command. As soon as curl got its weird reply, it disengaged, and that ended the program on both sides. So what's interesting there is a network command from outside the computer in my host was able to talk to a process that was running inside the container. So that's if I exit here and scroll back up to see the command that started this, we can see that magic was made possible by including a port mapping in my Docker run command. And that is probably enough for now about Docker. We've covered a little bit about images versus containers. Oh, I should say a little more about actually this will be helpful. Let me clear one of those shells. Let's return to the list of containers. It's worth noticing that I ran several different commands, Docker run commands, and I ended up with several different containers. So each one of those Docker run commands was a different container, one named Cranky Hamilton, one named Strage Meyer, and one named Competent Shockley. All of them came from the same Alpine base image. So to me, they looked like I was in the same container, but it in fact was in three different containers. That's an important, sort of an important feature of Docker. Having a packaged up image means I can start from a well-known file system and then do my own things inside of it. The other handy thing about being inside of Docker is that I can run several containers at the same time, but we'll probably have a look at that in a different video. Anyway, thanks for watching.